welcome. Thank you for being part of Globalizing Calgary Tech Volume 2. My name is Terry Rock. I'm the President and CEO of Platform Calgary. This series is intended to be smaller conversations with leaders from our community, connecting them to what's happening around the world and how Calgary's innovation ecosystem fits into that global perspective. Platform Calgary believes that behind every great innovator is a great community. We thank you for being part of this important community that is building new pathways for prosperity in our city. We're in the midst of an effort at Platform Calgary to build a circle of support to help us raise the funds necessary to complete the process of acquiring and opening the Platform Innovation Center in 2021 and programming it for impact in the community. We're hoping you'll all be interested in hearing more as we go. To start, I want to mention that we all know that innovation isn't new to Calgary. The city has pioneered new industries, transformed those industries, and led Canada in economic dynamism for years. But most importantly, innovation is part of our collective human story. In the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we honor and acknowledge Mohkinstsis and the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Stoney Nakoda and Tsuut'ina nations. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3 within the historical Métis Northwest homeland. Finally, we acknowledge all nations, Indigenous and non, who live, work, play, innovate, and build things on this land, and in so doing, honor and celebrate this territory. We will be recording today's session to share with those who were not able to join live. So we've decided to take a different approach to today's session. We will, instead of doing a webinar, we wanted people to be able to see each other's faces. So we encourage you to enable speaker view in the top right corner of your Zoom screen for the best viewing experience, or feel free to use the the ability to flick through and see everyone in gallery, however it works for you, but we think speaker view would be best. Today, we're excited to hear from JF Gauthier, founder and CEO of Startup Genome, a serial founder, and as well as serial founder, investor, community builder, and co-founder of Zinc Ventures, Brad Zumwalt from Calgary. JF joining us. Thank you, JF, for joining us on US Thanksgiving. And Brad is here from Calgary. JF is in Silicon Valley. Our listening panel as well at the end will be made up of alumni from Platform Calgary's Student Summer Incubator and our Student Entrepreneurship Sprint program. And I want everyone here to stay tuned for in the new year, we will be launching a next generation advisory council. We think it is so important that our organization is for the future of our city, and we need to hear directly from those voices. JF will talk to us about the 2020 Global Startup Ecosystem Report, including Calgary's ranking and some thoughts that he has had about Calgary's direction, where we could go. Startup Genome just launched a global fintech report as well. He might share some information about that with us. Following JF's talk, Brad Zumwalt will join JF in a fireside chat focusing on how Calgary can rally together to accelerate the tech startup community. To start off, we're really fortunate to have Senator Doug Black with us. Senator Black was elected by Albertans as a senator in waiting on April 13th, 2012. He was subsequently appointed to the Senate in 2013. Prior to serving in the Senate, Senator Black practiced law, served as a board member advisor to several Canadian businesses, true community builder in Calgary and Canada. He was appointed to Queen's Counsel in 2002, was named in 2012 as one of Canada's most influential lawyers by Canadian Lawyer magazine. Senator Black is co-chair with, honorary chair, sorry, with Brad Zumwalt of the Platform Advisory Roundtable. And as you can see, he's joining us on the move, Senator in action. Thank you for joining us today, Senator Black, over to you. Senator, you're muted.
We okay? Okay, perfect. Listen, Terry had asked before I introduce Brad and our distinguished guest speaker today, just to offer a few comments. So I'm going to offer a few comments briefly, because frankly, I'm outside in the deep south of Calgary and I'm freezing. So I'm going to be short and to the point. So look, I want to just say that in my recent travels, I did a virtual tour of Alberta over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I have been absolutely struck by the amount of innovation that we're seeing throughout the province. You know, whether it's in hydrogen or geothermal or AI or medical services or ag, we are seeing people everywhere starting to think about how they can accelerate the work they're doing or how they can get into the field in whatever field they're in. And it's very encouraging. And you know, the recent Nobel Prize in medicine, which went to Dr. Houghton and his colleagues at the University of Alberta, has absolutely underlined Alberta as a place where world-class research and innovation can and does happen. We cannot underestimate the message that that is sending. I see and I hear that a fair bit. And I'm seeing, firsthand throughout the province, as I've indicated, and I'm also learning from the various organizations throughout the province about the work that's going on. But we can agree there's much more to be done. There's much, much more to be done. And there's no place that I am seeing where this is getting done than here in the city of Calgary. It's incredible what is happening in the ecosystem, and we're going to hear about that a little bit today. But importantly, we're going to hear about how we can improve and where we need to improve. The key to any successful endeavor is leadership and data. And we're going to learn a little bit about that today. On leadership, while there are many extraordinary leaders in Calgary, Brad Zumwalt, who of course is well known to us all, has been and continues to be an engine in developing Calgary as a home for startups, scale-ups, and funders. His business success is well known to us, but it's his contribution to the community beyond himself that I find so impressive. He defines giving back. And the evidence for that is around us. Rainforest, Alberta Enterprise Corporation, A100, CD Labs, Rockies, and of course, Platform. We are also extraordinarily fortunate to have with us today JF Gauthier, particularly on Thanksgiving, on US Thanksgiving, because JF is down in the States. He is the co-founder and the CEO, as Terry has pointed out, of startup Genome. We're going to learn from him today what is happening and what we can do in Calgary to improve where we are currently sitting. As I think we can all agree, it's great to celebrate our successes, but we learn to move towards success by focusing on how we can be stronger, better, smarter, faster. That's what we want to learn today. So look, thanks to you all for being on the call, and thanks to Terry and Brad for giving me this opportunity to kick this off. So with that, I think, JF, you're on.
Thank you, Senator.
Now I can unmute myself. Great. Thank you so much, Senator. This was great. Sorry you're freezing yourself, and we're freezing ourselves also in San Francisco. It's only 14 degrees. So it's going to be a cold Thanksgiving, unfortunately. Tongue in cheek. I come from Saguenay in the north of Quebec, so I've had more than my share of very cold weather, so I sympathize. And you know, it's always great to talk about Canada. Of course, this is my passion. Being Canadian, I want to see Canada succeed, and we've helped Toronto, Ottawa, Waterloo, Montreal, Vancouver, and for the last 2 years, been working with Terry here to really help Calgary, and worked also with Edmonton and the mayor's team to help Edmonton. And you know, I salute your efforts to really accelerate and as you transition your economy, and also partner closely with Edmonton, because it's about, you know, when we build an ecosystem, size is important, resources are important, and you know, I've also worked a lot in the Middle East. We work in Abu Dhabi, in Bahrain, in Riyadh, in Sharjah, in Iraq, where they also are trying to transition their economy. And it takes a lot of commitments. It takes a lot of great leaders, and takes the governments, the senators, the deputies, from all parties to really focus together on changing our economy. It's a long road, but thankfully you're starting from a good point already. Right? You have a sizable startup ecosystem, and it's created some big wins recently. So you're on the path. You have great universities. This is very important, high quality talent. So let's talk a little bit about what we see. And I think I have 10 minutes, right? Is that right, Terry? So Terry was encouraging me to talk a little bit about the global ranking. And of course, you know, the ranking is a good for a bad. It's motivating to see how we rank. But you know, today's ranking was something that we pushed out knowing that it was the end of the road of the economic cycle, right? And we were thinking about delaying actually to October. And I said, you know, in October, what happened in 2019 is irrelevant, right? Let's push it out, because this is the ranking for 2020 is really looking at the data for 2019 and before. So let's push it out. Let's focus on what's happening in COVID and how do we start regrowing after this huge crisis. So I don't want to focus too much on that report. In a way, I want to focus on, you know, the report that we put out about COVID. And I encourage you to go to our website to see what's happening to startups all over the world. What are the problems? And of course, the problems is, you know, funding, right? The startups are hurting because their runway has shortened, because they had a lot of expenses. They're all burning cash, as we know, and suddenly it was very difficult to grow and very difficult to raise money. So that was the most, you know, almost terrifying for me as an entrepreneur. And I remember coming back from vacation in Hawaii just when we went into a lockdown, and I didn't realize the amplitude of the problem until, you know, my friends entrepreneurs started telling me really dire news. And one of my friend had closed Series A, $20 million, a couple of $100 million in valuation, and she says 90% of my revenues evaporated. I'm like, wow. And then we heard the Facebook and the Twitter and all that, and the Amazon going very well. In Canada, Shopify doing very well. And one of my portfolio company, LimeSpot, doing very well. But when we looked at the numbers, actually, there is absolutely no subsector that has seen growing revenues during COVID. The best subsectors, so we did a couple of thousand surveys of entrepreneurs in many countries. And the best subsector was cybersecurity. And cybersecurity startups on average had seen their revenues drop by 20%. And the normal is not zero, right? Startups all grow, we all grow. And when we don't grow, we're out of the data because we don't exist anymore. So 20% drop is death, right? Because usually we grow 10% a month if we're doing well, right? 100% a year, 50% a year. So minus 20 is disastrous, is death. So what was concerning me as we've accumulated knowledge on what makes ecosystem succeed is size of the ecosystem. So if 20, 30, 40% of your startups die, you're setting back yourself 3, 4 years. So my first message working with our 45 governments we work with now is give them cash quickly. Don't start programs that are going to take 6 months to give them cash. Start programs that can give them cash in 3 weeks, you know, because they're firing people. And once they fire people, those startups that are going well, that have been wanting to hire a lot of people for the last 3 years, the Facebook, they'll hire them. And sure enough, that's what's happening. One of my friends was fired on Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. in the middle of March from her fintech startups that fired 50% of their people because they were not supported by their VCs. And that, when I called her at the end of my day to say, I'm so sorry, at 4 p.m. I called her and she said, I have an interview at Facebook at 6 p.m. Incredible, right? So the talent, you don't rehire after you fire 40% of your people in tech. You don't rehire, they're gone. There's other companies that are booming and hire them, and then rebuilding your startup is finished. It's very difficult. Your best employees are gone. You have to retrain, and you had a year and a half of runway from your VCs. You don't make it, you're dead. If you have to fire 50% of your employees, you die. So this has been the reality. And I know that in Calgary, you've had your share of that. And now that the leaders, right, the government leaders, and Terry, I know, has been working with his team. I know David is here to really prevent the death of a lot of the startups, support each other, and find funding opportunities. And that's really been number one for us. And now, undeniably, of course, tech is, for our leaders, for the governments, for all of us in society, is the engine of recovery. So as we get our startups to hurt, we hurt our ability to come out of this hole. When I looked at the data recently, 50% of jobs in the US are due to small and medium enterprises. In Europe, it's 66%. And when I looked at Yelp announcing that 60% of the SMEs on their site that closed temporarily in March or April had now closed permanently. Traditional jobs that are gone. When I compound that with Kaufman saying entrepreneurship has fallen in the last few years, plus the fact that banks have stopped lending to traditional new businesses, to traditional entrepreneurs, we're facing a problem of chronic unemployment, a big risk of chronic unemployment, where people in traditional jobs cannot find a new one for a while. So this is us, right, that are coming here to say, let's create jobs, let's support each other so that we create an engine for our friends to have work and have really exciting work, right? And so the importance of community, of the tech community right now, is more important than ever. So we've worked with Terry and all of our members to say, okay, what do you do to bring the community together to help them get demand, government procurement contracts, right? During COVID, it was like, what could they do to help the crisis? And now it's like, how can you change your law so that government is helping startups in all kinds of domains? I remember EdTech was not very hot before the crisis. Now every elementary school and high school has experience with virtual teaching. What is the government doing to get these local tech companies to come to the rescue and win? Are we going to just let Zoom win? Okay, we shouldn't do that. It's not the best platform for education, but without budget, it's cheap, it works. Education, elementary school will turn towards that. So how do we actually, as a government, create opportunities for our local startups to solve local problems so that they can create jobs and they can create winning, growing companies? I said that I was not going to do slides because I was preparing for Thanksgiving as our friends were coming home right now. And so I didn't have time to do slides, but while Terry was talking, I rearranged a few slides, bringing back what we know of Calgary and what is really the goal. And I think the goal is just amplified with COVID. Is the same goal as before. So let's review that. What do we know that is the core issues, And I talked about how the size of an ecosystem is very important. I'm sharing the wrong screen, of course. Let me share the right screen, try again. As we talked about the need for the ecosystem not to drop in size, right? During COVID and the risk that it does. The number one issue for Calgary is that there's a small number of startups. It's really not big enough to have the pool of talent of entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, growth hackers, engineers that really can support a fast-growing startups, and a number of them. Number two, early stage funding. Number three, startup quality. So let's go through that a bit. You see my screen, yeah? Yeah. So number of startups, like the data it's so clear. It's ridiculous how, as the number of startups, the x-axis grows, or the exit value grow exponentially. There's some exception like Stockholm, that was amazing. lot of the series, but it's really clear you need to be bigger. And when we look at Calgary, unfortunately, per million people, right, very, very few startups. And that was before a year and a half, maybe before the pandemic. So there was probably some growth before until March, but then probably some drop since then. So I might infer that you're about at the same point. And if you look at the startup output of Waterloo, right, of Ottawa, of New Zealand, New Zealand is very small. Ottawa is not able to create scale-ups. And I look at Calgary, it's too small, right? So for it to play, for the startup ecosystem, for us, our community to play a role in economic recovery, we need to have more entrepreneurs and we need to support them. And you have great universities, but the path from university to creation of startups is very small. It's not a traditional path. Waterloo is a smaller region than Calgary and has 2 to 3 times more startups because the university was created by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs to create more jobs for the ecosystem because they didn't have an oil and gas economy. They had lost in 1980 and 1990 a lot of their manufacturing companies, they had beer making, they had all kinds, they had also electronics assembly, and most of them died by 2000. And the mayor says, let's really focus on tech. And it's been a big success. So Calgary can follow the path of Waterloo, building a big center like Terry is building, right? Like I know Platform Calgary is being an innovation center that's going to be the center of entrepreneurship and innovation. And that's very important. That's what community tech does. Because once everybody converges towards one place, they talk to each other, they help each other. It's easier to recruit, it's easier to raise money. So I salute that. But there's of course other things to do, right? Entrepreneurship curriculum is nice, but it's not really a big impact, right? Having incubators in universities, very important. CDL, I know it's playing a good role in Calgary. It's really doing well in Calgary, but the class of CDL is small. It's 10, 20 entrepreneurs, 20 startups. We need 100 startups more this year. We need 200 by next year, right? We need to grow the ecosystem to 700 startups before you create a series of $100 million exits. The data again is clear. Nobody has ever done it at a smaller size. Stockholm at 650 startups, the most amazing of all times, starting to create unicorns at 650, 700 startups. Helsinki at 500-600, starting to create 100 million exits. Copenhagen, about the same thing. And that might be the Scandinavian magic, but it's also they have small cities. So in small cities, there's more chances to have a tight community that helps and learns from each other. That's what community tech had. That's what Waterloo had. You have that chance, right? You're a small city. So probably at 600, 700, you're going to see you're getting to the next level. But you're at 200 or 300. So creating entrepreneurs, supporting them, right? Pre-accelerators like Platform Calgary is building on, supporting that pre-accelerator so it not only does a class of 10 or 20, but like bigger classes of pre-accelerators, and getting the students out of the university into the tech ecosystem. That means into the innovation center where they relate with entrepreneurs, especially the PhDs that are used to be deep in science, and they need to, like I remember, I interviewed a lot of the leaders of community tech that told me when they created the community tech in 1997, the professors and the techies, they said, we need a place outside of the university to talk about customers, sales, raising money. In the university, we don't talk about that. We talk about papers. We talk about patents. It's like, we need to talk about business. Let's open a building somewhere else where we can walk out of the university and talk about business. How do we build a business and have a new culture? So this is what I know you're building as an innovation center, but taking the university students out of the university when they go to an incubator is important. An accelerator. Student competition. I know ETS, the dean in Montreal, largest engineering school in Canada, was saying, what created the most startups for us is student competitions. They might spend 10, 20 hours on a project in a class, but they'll spend 1,000 hours in building the best electric vehicle. and hacking competitions. Co-op programs, right? Where Waterloo is renowned for that. ATS copied it. Said get them to go for credits, go work for a company, and I'd say get them to go work for a startup, not a company, and even as SME, because once you go work for a dry cleaner, you realize how software and technology can help the dry cleaner. You find problems, you find business opportunities, and you touch the entrepreneur of the SME that says, I was not afraid, I opened a dry cleaning. And the student says, I think I can do it too. I can be an entrepreneur. So it's about touching entrepreneurship. It's not about practical training only, because you don't do practical training for AWS. It's just the first step of recruiting. And it's a very narrow job that you get. That's what not we need in startups. We need techies that have a breadth of they can do the database, they can do the front end, they can do the back end, they can do all of it at the beginning. Increasing early stage startup, I know this is an extremely important issue, and I've said pretty dramatic things when I was in Calgary last time. I'll repeat them, but maybe a little less less aggressively, which is you're lacking what's the most important in a startup ecosystem, which is your early stage funding. And I'm looking to see if I have the slide ready, but the highest correlation between rate of exits in a startup ecosystem with anything is the rate of seed funded startups. And when I say seed funded, it's not a grant. When I was in Calgary, I sat down with a dozen funders, and I did it a couple of times. I do that all over the world. I put on my t-shirt, my jeans, and I heard, yeah, I have non-dilutive capital, and I have twice I got non-dilutive capital. And I'm like, what is non-dilutive capital? Well, it's grants, right? And everybody around me were like, yeah, we've all applied for grants. I've never heard that anywhere else in the world except in Seoul. And Seoul has the same problem. When you get a business angel to invest, you focus, you sell them your business, your ability to grow, to get customers, and they bring you business expertise, and they bring you a lot of industry expertise, right? For you, you're probably going to have a lot of angels that made their money in the energy industry, and they'll be great to open doors to the energy industry and connect you with people who can tell you what problems so these companies have that you can develop a product around and go deeper to develop a great value proposition for them. So business angels comes with capital plus business expertise plus industry expertise plus customer introductions. This is what's needed. You need to have that. And so not surprisingly, the percentage of seed funded by business angels, startups, is extremely correlated to the percentage of exits. So you don't have that, because when you have a lot of grants, startups get really good at grant writing, and that doesn't really help them. They don't get any of that business, tough love from the angels and all that. So I said last time, the government can get, it's a good opportunity right now, or we have a lot of deficits, get out of giving grants and pay employees to write grants and select startups. Give the money as a sidecar fund to your angels. It's going to cost less to the government, and it's going to bring all the deal flow to the angels, because your angel groups they have good people, but they lack deal flow, they lack experience, and conversely, they cannot play their role for the entrepreneurs. So this is really important. And I know I was talking to the Western development part of the federal government. I know I don't remember the name correctly, but I was talking to the chief economist, and he was like, who should we help? Should we help this seed institutional investor, seed VC, or should we help the Alberta angel group, or should we help the Canadian angel group? Or should we open our own seed company? And I'm like, if you open your own seed government investing, maybe it's going to go faster, but it's exactly the wrong thing to do. Your role is to shape a private enterprise set of organization, private community that are self-sustainable. When you do it instead of them, you're digging a hole. So don't do that. Don't do the seed institutional investor, because the seed VC wants to invest only in the best startups. And that's not what you need. You need to spread the money. And as Josh Lerner always says, The angels are much better at spreading the money, at throwing darts everywhere. That's exactly what you need, because if you want more entrepreneurs, you need more to get money and learn to be an entrepreneur and do it again because they got funded, but they failed, but they learned. So you need to spread the money. You need to support your angels. I said, support the local angel and support the Canadian angels, both of them. You know, 2 angel groups much better. In Quebec, there's only one. That's a big problem. When I ask some of the VC investors, what do you think about only having 1 angel group? Is this a problem? Everybody rapidly raised their hands. They're like, yeah, because once someone who's well-renowned at Ange Quebec says no, it's death. You need competition in really investment profile. So you need to help your angel groups. This is very important. If you're going to put capital.
Hey, JF, it's Terry.
Yeah.
You're on a super roll, but we just for time, I'm wondering if we could get you to skip to the third one and we could bring Brad in here shortly.
Yeah, great. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
So then the last one is startup quality, really. And how do you increase quality? Well, first is global relationships, right? When the more connected you are outside, the more you create startup that growth, startups that focus on foreign customers grow faster. This is very clear. But I want to say, I want to focus on local problems. You have lots of great companies, but think about this fact. In Seoul, they can focus and create a unicorn that is Korean only because they don't speak English very well. So it's very hard for Facebook to go attack them. You're in an English community. All of your customers see the US offering. So you need to have something new and special. And that means you need to know what's going on in the US, in Europe, because they're going to come to Canada very rapidly. So you need to connect so that you create a unique business model that's not copied, that's very different. This is much more important in an Anglo-Saxon country than in any other country that doesn't speak English. So that's the three most important messages. Thank you, Terry, for giving me a time check.
No problem. Thank you. So now let's just, Brad, if you want to chime in, we can bring you in. And I know you folks have, we did a little pre-chat, but I know, and Brad, you've studied a lot of this stuff, so take it away.
No, thank you, JF, for making time today. And I really appreciate your comments and reflecting back to that meeting that we held with you at, and you do not shy away from asking the hard-hitting questions. I want to make sure people have a chance to chime in on the chat with a question. I think we're just going to run this section for about 10 or 12 minutes, Terry, to leave enough time. I'm very interested to hear from the students on the panel about their takeaways. The first definitional question, JF, is you use the word startup. How should we understand what you mean by that word when you're talking about Calgary has a couple hundred of this word startup and you want us to get to 5 times that at 1,000? What do you define as a startup?
So, you know, definition of Steve Blank is very broad and not very useful, which is, you know, temporary organization in search for a scalable business model. But what it means really in practice is that this is a new business model that has a high potential. It could become $1 billion company, right? There's no restaurant that can do that. You know, it could become $1 billion company in 5 years, not 30 years. Restaurants can do that, but it's slow. So it means that it's tech-based because it's scalable, right? If it takes a lot of employees to tailor the service, deliver the service, it's clearly not scalable. But it's also high potential, which means it's also new, right? If it's very niche, it's not. If it's cheaper than what's currently on the market, it's not going to work, right? Unless it's 100 times cheaper, but that means it's a substitute. It's not an alternative. So, you know, practically, you know, when an investor, an angel, a VC, or invest in a company, when a accelerator takes it, it's because they thought about it, and it is a startup. You know, and then when it looks like it, when you know this is new, you know, it's like e-commerce. We said this is not highly scalable anymore. I took it out. We said e-commerce, this is reselling stuff. We've been doing that for 20 years. This is not a high scalable, high potential business anymore. But then someone said, what about cannabis e-commerce? And I'm like, that's a startup. New business, new space, highly scalable. And then they said, what about e-commerce subscription in 2015? I said, yeah, new business model. That's in, right? So it depends if it's completely new. Is the business model very new? Is it an open space? That's where I draw the line.
And when you say highly scalable, do you have metrics for this? Do you have thresholds, annual growth rates, or anything like that? ARR levels?
So scalable doesn't mean it's growing quickly, right? It means that you could sell 1,000 times with only 3 times more employees. That's what scalable means, right? This is tech. Is that software? It's automated. I could sell 1 million times more. So the scalable part is pretty easy usually, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean you grow fast. Growing fast is about marketing, it's about demand. So the question, being able to have the high potential to scale is about, it's new. It's a big market.
Right. So when we understand, and you have investors on the call here with us, and company founders and other industry people, when you think of Calgary, you showed that one slide that had us at a few hundred of what you would call a startup, but need to go 5x on that. How do those get distributed size-wise? You might have seen the model that A100 and myself and others have put together about how many of the enterprise level big companies and how many of the really scaling companies and growth companies down to the smaller companies. What have you seen in the other cities you studied about what the distribution of names look like in their portfolio of startups in a city?
The distribution of names?
The distribution of companies by size. What percentage is the big enterprise ones? What percentage are the one person ones? And how do we work on each of those differently? What have other cities done? Yeah,
so of course, like the scale ups need something different from the first one. And I think for you have a size where with Edmonton and having a scale up program is important. And we're working on this. And I talked to Terry about some of the things we do. And there's others, as Endeavor that does things. But the model of Technation of like, how do we get C-level executive? And right now we're thinking about going to get Canadian expats in tech companies and in targeted traditional companies, customer industries, to coach startups that are at 5 million plus in revenue and growing rapidly. But for you, most of the energy should be on the earlier startups, and coaching them, mentoring them, giving them help, helping them with growth marketing, right? I know you're working with GrowthX. This is exactly right? Okay. We've been talking about that. But I wanted to come back on one point about what a startup is. If you had asked me if Zuckerberg's school book online was a startup, I would have been like, not great. Small market, right? How many $5 million market in the US to put school books online? It was a terrible idea, right? But this is first step. It was a scalable idea, and it was about the community. It was social network. So when you doubt that whether it's in or out, it's because it's in. When it's out, you know it. The restaurant's out. This is clear, right?
A couple other kind of definitional questions on these boundaries. When we're lucky, and you pointed out great research institutions in Alberta, and you talk about these numbers getting to the thousands of startups. What percentage in other cities do major research institutions contribute? I personally, I've read research on this and go back and forth. I'm a big fan in Calgary of our University of Calgary and alumni kind of from there, and love to support what they do. But I really feel that so much of this has to happen in industry as well. Do you have any guidance for the discussions that we have in our city about the university has to be firing on all cylinders and doing awesome, but so does industry? And when we see the company counts and job counts go up, here's the percentage that the leading post-secondaries can contribute, and here's what industry has to do. Do you have any guidance on that?
Yeah, totally. And of course, the looking at Waterloo, we know that the university can create so many startups by themselves, but they need to change, right? It's hard to get a university dean to change. So what Startup Amsterdam did instead is say, let's go get the students and the leaders of incubators that want to create change, the people in tech transfer that want to create businesses instead of licenses, and they grow that. On the employer side, right, Terry just led a members meeting focused on that, and we heard a lot of ideas from other places. It's very difficult, but the best the best way for me that I've seen, I mean, one of the best ways is, industry competition, right? Find challenges, not for one company, for one company also, but say, okay, what are the big problems of oil and gas right now? Let's define 3 challenges and get people, and now employees, right, can pitch, because they can look at it and say, and they have to have a prize and say, okay, 100K prize for the best one. It doesn't cost you that much, but now 100 teams start working on a business idea, and they might not go back. They might not let it go. They might do it, and even if they don't win the first prize. But this is where you get the employees. This is where you get the IT consultants that have always wanted to do a business, but they're just selling hours, and now they're like, okay, this is a real problem because this company is sponsoring it, and it's a real problem. It's a real opportunity. Okay, I'll do a product instead of selling hours. And now you have all this community that breaks out, that is not mostly students. It's usually mostly employees in companies, tech employees, and IT consultants starting to pitch, because now you've identified. So the big problem is that identifying a problem worth solving for them. Right? We have ideas. We walk around. We have ideas. I have ideas all the time, and then I look on the net. I'm like, oh, somebody else did it.
Yeah.
What is the problem worth solving? So then this corporate innovation program is very important, because now they start. This is the other way.
With problems, right?
So
with problems.
One thing that is the other big idea is Tech Cartier in Frankfurt is, instead of doing 1 or 2 big programs, they have 30 corporations and they have 50 programs. Each bank and each corporation has 1 or 2 accelerators with 10 startups. And suddenly the engagement between these 30 companies and the tech community is huge. So now you have the opportunity to ask a VP sales, hey, do you have problem with this? Because now I know the person, right? I'm not in the same cohort, but they come to the innovation center. Now I have a chance to ask, is that a real problem? Because this is the beginning of a startup. Talking to your customers, is this a real problem?
Yeah. The last question I have for you, because I think we want to turn it over in just a couple of minutes here, JF, is walk us through other example cities that have gone down the track of a platform innovation center, and how has that worked and where has it not worked? What are the success paths and what are the pitfalls to avoid as we bring a downtown innovation center to Calgary?
Yeah, so there's hundreds of failures, and in big cities it's usually very difficult to just create an innovation center and put enough activity that suddenly it becomes the pole. In small cities, we see it as much more successful. In small cities, have small ecosystem even more, right? And the success is about bringing the investors, the VCs, the accelerators, so the programs and the angels and the VCs into it, right? So that there's a reason for the startups to always converge and bring and talk to each other. And then events, free events. I have a keg of beer on Tuesday, and that's for AI. And every Tuesday we meet for AI. Every Wednesday we meet for this. So create activities. In Waterloo, it's amazing. In Frankfurt, not as much of a, come have a beer because it's in a beautiful building, but very successful because they multiply these programs. So in a small community, it's usually very successful when you create a real exciting place where you have a lot of programs.
Okay, thank you. I think we have to turn it off, but if you have a couple more words of advice for where Calgary has to go in the next 5 years, I like, of course, your three buckets. Anything about culture and how, on the softer side of things as we leave it and turn it back over to Terry.
Yeah, so we measured culture, and I didn't mention it because you're doing very well in Calgary, and I'll just flash the slide. So I did the 3 things you need to do, and you see this is the real measurement of your local connectedness, and the sense of community is people helping each other, and you see people help each other in Calgary much better than elsewhere, and that's why it's not in there, and that's something to celebrate, and that's really good omen. Good start for building a community that grows, that people already help each other. I
love finishing on that good omen, JF. And as always, thank you for your work keeping us honest to these global standards. I really appreciate your input always. Thank you. And Terry, back to you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Great
you,
to see
Brad
you.
and JF.
If I can
Just-
log off and go to my guests who are
Yes,
we'll
storming
finish up
outdoors.
without you. Thank you so much. I was going to say
Thank
nice things about you, but I'll let you go. And
Bye. Ciao, ciao.
well, so thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Brad. Everyone, Brad, it's so amazing to continue to benefit from your leadership in the community. And I think what JF just shared is a perfect example of what you exemplify, and the group of people that you work with, most of whom are on this call, many of whom are on this call. So we're adding a new bit so thank you, Brad. We're adding a bit of a different wrap today. We're going to have some students, again, who we see as part of our next generation of tech leaders from our Student Summer Incubator program and our Student Entrepreneurship Sprint programs. So I have Aisha Azar, founder of Kersey. We have Maggie Tai, founder of Jam H. We have Taryn Singh Kainth, a serial entrepreneur and founder of Flamingo. And we have Sabrina Altamirano, founder of Ludum Caput Studios, joining us today. And so I'm just going to do a bit of light moderation for this. So if I could ask Aisha, can you join us now and unmute and talk about what resonated with you from the conversation today?
Hi, everyone. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, awesome. So I really enjoyed the conversation. Just as a student entrepreneur, I feel like these kind of conversations are very encouraging to start with. I have a question in regards to the conversation. The one thing that I really identified with was how JF and Brad kind of mentioned the student transition from a university program or like a funding program, and then actually launching a startup. I was wondering if there's any advice you'd give a startup student or anything in regards to that.
Ooh. Brad, you give advice probably 10 times a day. What's your advice there?
I think JF really covered it well when he said it's such an advantage to think about the problem first and really stay at that spot. Often I see young teams get busy with the trappings of setting up a business, but to just stay on that problem and solving that problem for a real live customer, they're your audience, and you need to perform for them, and so stay in that tight customer loop as long as you can, working on this thing, product market fit. Such an advantage to how you'll start in your business when you really stay focused on that. Good luck.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Aisha. Did you have anything else? You're good. Maggie, do you want to join us and give us your takeaways or questions?
Sure. Hello. Thank you for coming today, Brad and JF. JF is gone, but thank you to him and for Platform Calgary for organizing this event. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I found a lot of things that I'll be able to take back to my team. So from the conversation, speaking for myself from personal experience, it was with the support of the Summer Incubator program that really helped kick off the startup I'm working on, Jam, to a great start. And from May, we've been able to grow from a co-founding team of 4 to a team of 13. And this is just from the support of the community. And after the insight today, I can say it's a community like this that allows for Calgarian youth to contribute to Calgary's economic ranking and to build solutions that will contribute to society, hopefully. Of the 3 main points that JF mentioned, I emphasize most with the first one though, and it's the initiative to increase the number of startups. And since starting university, I can see that there has been a push to rein students in from opportunities like the Summer Incubator program to university related events organized with the ecosystem, and even the Hunter Hub for entrepreneurial thinking that is at the University of Calgary. And I found that his point in regards to encouraging students to join startups for co-op placements, I think it'd be worth to explore the idea of a job database that connected students to startups, given once Platform Calgary has that innovation center.
Thank you. That's great insight, and it's something we think about a lot, and some of our partners are, I think, working on those kinds of things. So I think I'm so looking forward to having the place where we can also not just virtually do it, but physically tell each other. Thank you, Maggie, for joining us. Taryn, if you want to join us now and provide some highlights.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Taryn. I'm the founder of Flamingo. I found the conversation to be extremely insightful. There's many points that were offered, and I think one of the things I recognize is Calgary's moving towards a positive direction. For a long time, running my first company, I wasn't very bullish. I spent time in Toronto, spent some considerable time in SF, and just the different things that were going on there. It made me sad to see that not much is going on in Calgary, but now that fact has changed for sure. Exceptionally changed during COVID for sure. The biggest takeaway that I took, and this is something I ask myself, is COVID is representing an opportunity for Calgary as a city to emerge as a behemoth. There are amazing universities or amazing institutions here. How can we leverage this top talent to stay in Alberta? And I think with the remote learning, we're able to do that. Having the opportunities of building a ecosystem that collaborates versus competes, I think is very important. Looking at the universities and the talents coming out of there, harboring, that entrepreneurial ecosystem, and then having these students working with startups is so important because, they are the ones that are going to continue. But one of the things I recognized when I spent time in SF was companies fail, and it's, most companies will end up failing. But in Alberta, we're very conservative about that. My first company failed, and, I'm scared to talk about it, but that should be a badge of honor. I got the experience. Now I can take that on to my second startup. And the big thing, the example that was given was, Facebook, prior to Mark Zuckerberg starting Facebook, he started something way smaller, right? But now, Facebook is a behemoth because he got that experience from his first startup. And I think the big thing I recognized was initially, where I felt like Calgary startups were, playing in a sandbox. Well, in places like New York, Silicon Valley, they're building skyscrapers. And I think now that's changing. There's a slow trickle down effect that's happening where there's cross-pollination between different organizations. You look at Simmon, Adabotics, Benevity, and Solium, these being massive companies. I've noticed within my own circles, people are moving from company to company. People are becoming more experienced. And because of this, instigation of community, people crossing over, the community is getting more mature and there's an increase of collaboration. So I only think that Calgary is going to go up from here. And as a student entrepreneur, slowly coming into the ecosystem and seeing so much more happen, it just makes me a lot happier. And finally, I think the last point that resonated with me was governments play a massive role here. Instead of governments trying to figure out, hey, where should we give the money? Increase the level of collaboration, work with angel groups because they have the experience, right? So giving them the capital to actually, spur these companies and getting, from 200 to 400 to 500, just increases the number of success that we can have, right? It's a numbers game in the end of the day. So those are the big takeaways that I took away from it.
Thanks. Thank you, Taryn, for your enthusiasm and for getting up off the mat and starting again. Good to see you again. And finally, Sabrina, can you bring us some thoughts?
Absolutely. First off, this is my favorite part of this entire event, is just seeing this conversation, this level of engagement and involvement is really the exhibit A of everything that we've talked about here today. All right. By you guys just setting up this event and bringing this conversation to mind, it just shows exactly how much this brings value to the community. And the thing that really stuck to me the most was just the beauty of the model that JF was proposing, that's in a really cyclical manner, right? Which is the root of every sustainability project out there, is you work in a circle. By feeding entrepreneurs, you feed them transferable skills, you allow them to dream again, you allow them to believe that anything is possible. Whether or not they succeed, they still take that with them and they wear it, just like as Taryn said, as badges of honor, that then allows them to do better in any environment that they're placed in, right? Making that environment yet more successful, much more likely to make a drastic change in whatever society, and grow from there. And I think that is incredibly valuable. And the more that we feed that, the more angel investors that we're going to have, and the more people that are going to want to collaborate and say, someone helped me out when I was, just starting out, I want to pay it forward. And I think that is so valuable in having this type of conversation, You know, in previous times, it's just been like, you get there, you make it, you keep it, awesome. And it's every man for themselves. And seeing this collective consciousness change is such an inspiring thing. It makes me very happy.
Well, thank you for being part of it and for bringing that perspective, because I definitely I got excited just listening to all four of you, and I'm so excited to imagine the kinds of insights that the next generation is going to bring to us as we continue to plan and build a platform Calgary. So thank you to all four of you, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We are working on our next volume 3 of this, which we hope to happen towards the end of January. You'll get information about that. And we are working hard to connect with our colleagues in the Nordic countries, which we think have, as JF mentioned, there's some special sauce there that we can learn from. So we're hoping to have a conversation with maybe Norway, Sweden, Finland, which has some really interesting connections with us. So before I leave you, I'll just share this one screen. So this evening, we're very excited, speaking of making connections, to have our founder showcase. It starts at 6:30 p.m. on Remo, which you will see a number of presentations from the participants in our Junction program, which is a program for first-time founders. And it just really brings a whole community of support from every corner of Calgary's ecosystem to help this cohort. So I do hope you can join us and hear these folks and encourage them on their journey as people who are building the next economy in Calgary. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Continued major thanks from us for your support. As I said, we are building a circle of support around the Platform Innovation Center, and we do hope that people can join us in bringing that into reality and putting some fuel on the fire of this community. Thanks again. Have a great weekend, and hopefully see you at 6:30 tonight. Cheers.